Welcome back to Punk Rock Theologian. Today is the first day of something that I'm pretty excited about. I've been working on for a while. One thing I didn't tell you last week is that for this year, there's going to be some consistency month to month to month. The first week of the month is going to be just kind of the typical teaching that I've often done here. Find something in the Bible that sticks out to me or that isn't the way people normally think about things and share that. The second week of the month is going to be a bit of a training in how to share our faith, how to talk about it, how to know what you believe and why. Maybe dig a little deeper about yourself than you've even done in the past. The third week is going to be answering some of the questions that come up along the way, stuff that I've received in comments, things that hopefully as we get going with questions, it'll inspire some more to come in. I love being able to answer people's actual questions instead of me trying to guess what'll be helpful for you. Then the fourth week is something I'm pretty excited about. I'm calling it the Punk of the Month. I'm going to share with you some of my favorite stories of people who brought very much a punk theologian mindset to the way they lived their lives, the way they followed Jesus, and the impact they had on the people around them. And so with all that being said, this is the second week of January. So it's time to jump into our first lesson in what is Christianity? What do we believe and how can we share it with people around us? The term for this is apologetics, which to modern ears sounds like apologizing, and that's not at all what it is. It comes from an old Greek term, apologia. It's giving a defense. It's like a legal defense. It's being able to explain something, which is why I'm calling this series Un-Apologetics, because it's a bit of a punk approach to it. Go ahead and use your brain, look at the evidence, dig into stuff. I'm expecting you to use your own brain to evaluate the stuff I offer you, and then be able to take it and apply it to the conversations that come up with the people you care about. People that you encounter that have questions, that don't know if there is such thing as truth, if there's such thing as God, if miracles could be real, if Jesus ever lived. This is all stuff that we're going to cover, but it's going to take all year to get through it all. So now, after way too long of an introduction, when I've got a lot to say in our first one, what is apologetics? As I already said, in a nutshell, it is being able to explain your faith. That's why it's such a punk rock theologian thing. You should be able to use your own brain. And it's not just, I'm a Christian because that guy on stage said so. No, it needs to be something real for you that you have processed and internalized. Yes, it is an emotional, spiritual thing, but it should very much also be an intellectual thing. We're supposed to use our brains as well as our emotions, as well as our spirits. God made all of us, and He intends to work with all of us. And plain and simple, the goal of this training is to make every one of us, every one of you, better ambassadors for Christ. In case you didn't realize that's actually your job, 2 Corinthians 5:20 says, we are Christ's ambassadors. Christ is making His appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. Think about what it is to be an ambassador in world politics. If you're the US ambassador to China, don't you think you should know some things about the United States? What makes the US different from other countries? What is good about the United States? You should be able to answer some questions when somebody in a foreign land asks you about the place that you represent. Every single one of us, if you claim Jesus' name in any way whatsoever, you're representing Him. Are you representing Him well? That's what it is to be a decent ambassador. Yes, there is absolutely an appeal of turn back to God, come to God, let Him receive you with open arms, let Him forgive your sins, let Him transform your life, let Him completely overhaul your eternity and give you a glorious inheritance. These are all big things that matter. But the point is, the ambassador's job is to answer the questions, or as Alistair McGrath put it, it's about removing the obstacles that stand in a person's way between where they are and faith in God. Because everybody starts out with questions. Many of us spend most of our lives with questions. And I don't care how long you have followed Jesus and how much you love Him and trust Him with all your heart, we still have questions. And sometimes these questions can become obstacles. They turn into roadblocks that get in our way of taking a step, of being able to trust and follow Him. But a key piece to remember is that we're about clearing the path. Apologetics is not finding the magic silver bullet that can answer every single question and will guarantee the person, if I have this conversation, you are gonna come to Jesus. That's not what it is. That's not real life. That's not how it works. Apologetics is about clearing the rocky paths. It's being able to enter into the conversations and the questions with science and suffering and history and logic. Christianity is not afraid of any of those things, and Jesus is very relevant in every single one. And so it's our job to help a person see the truth clearly. As 1 Peter 3:15 puts it, you must worship Christ as Lord of your life, and if someone asks you about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it. That's the question. Are you ready to explain it? Can you explain your hope as a believer? Can you explain why you trust Jesus? Can you explain why Jesus is trustworthy? Can you explain how we know anything about Jesus and why it matters? And once again, recognize the goal is planting seeds, even though we may or may not be present at all when those seeds eventually bloom. Some of them will never bloom, but that's not our job. That's up to God. Our job is to be ready, is to be a good ambassador. Because here's the problem. According to recent research, roughly 70% of teenagers who enter their first year of college claiming to be a Christian leave that first year saying they're no longer a Christian. 70%. Only 3 in 10 make it through 1 year. And by the way, at the end of 4 years, it gets lower than that. Is this proof that Christianity is not really a valid thing in the world? And as soon as kids get out into the real world, all of it falls apart? Well, no. The problem is we send them out there completely unprepared. Hosea 4:6 says, "My people are being destroyed because they don't know me." That's exactly what we see going on. We are not teaching people to know Jesus, to know the facts, to know why Christianity is real, why we follow this at all, how it can very much stand up to every attack out there. When someone comes to them with something to think through on their own, they're ill equipped, they're unarmed, and they don't know how to handle it. Because they come up against somebody who sounds very intellectual, someone who has maybe studied a whole lot, who is really, really intelligent, but lacks faith. They have no spiritual understanding. So they put out these logic puzzles or philosophical arguments, and so they feel like, oh, my team lost. He totally outsmarted me. The Christianity that I knew has no answer to this question. Oh no, Christianity must not be real. And every single one of us who knows Jesus should be ashamed of that ever happening, that we're letting anyone come to that conclusion. Colossians 2:8 says, "Don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high sounding nonsense that comes from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ." But that's exactly what's going on. The stuff that sounds like these intellectual things of, well, the Bible is just a bunch of fairy tales or science has disproven God. These are stuff that I get with all the time. But when we get faced with these questions, we don't know how to answer and end up concluding that Christianity has no answers. And that is simply false, which is why I'm encouraging you to take time to use the brain that God gave you to learn, to know what is truth, and to know how to answer these arguments, to know how to tear apart these arguments with the power of Christ. Particularly for any type of spiritual leader, which, by the way, every single parent is called to be the spiritual leader of their children. And even if you don't have children, you have influence. Leadership is nothing but influence. And there are people who you have influence over. And it's our duty to instill in the people around us the knowledge that there are answers to the tough questions. That's why 2 Timothy 2, starting verse 24, says, "A servant of the Lord must not quarrel, must be kind to everyone, be able to teach, and be patient with difficult people. Gently instruct those who oppose the truth. Perhaps God will change those people's hearts and they will learn the truth." That's our job. That's what we're going to do. And so this is really just a bit of a teaser. This is saying what we're about to do. I don't have time today to get into the meat of it. We're going to spend all year digging into this because I don't want to hurry through it. This stuff is worthwhile. It will change your life. It'll change the lives of people around you if we will take the time to invest ourselves, to learn, to grow, to give Jesus the attention he deserves, and to become a good ambassador, to be able to represent him, to represent our King to the world around us. And an all too common story is to feel unprepared. I've lived through it myself more times than I care to admit. And honestly, that's what drove me to become the Bible nerd I am today. I'm not saying everyone needs to be like me. In fact, please don't all be like me. The world needs a lot of different types out there. Not everyone's going to listen to me. But let me just leave you with this idea. Our faith is not based on fairy tales or on wishful thinking or on nice ideas, but on reality, on historical events, on scientific evidence, on data. Our faith is unique in that. And it's worth knowing why, to let it strengthen you in your own faith, but to prepare you to share and to strengthen someone else. That's what we're aiming to do, and I can't wait to dig into it.